Members, Representative Bakeberg is with us already today. He's the second author on the next bill, and I've asked him to present on behalf of Representative Creashaw. The chair moves that House File 957 be re-referred to the Education Finance Committee. Representative Bakeberg has an author's amendment to put the bill in the shape he would prefer. Members, a similar amendment was adopted in Education Finance for House File 6, and actually we've already heard this component of the bill in House File 6. This amendment addresses an issue that Representative Jordan raised during our February 12th hearing, so that any provision that is otherwise restricted or mandated by federal law would not be subject to a delay in implementation. The amendment is also consistent with a similar restriction regarding fund transfers. So members, all those in favor of the A1 author's amendment, Representative Jordan, go ahead, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Bakeberg, and maybe Representative Creashaw for this amendment. I just want to be very clear then. So then would this mean that schools would not be able to opt out of providing unemployment insurance to their hourly school workers?
Representative Bakeberg.
So anything that would conflict with federal law would be covered. So.
Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, that is one of the ones that does conflict with federal law. So that would mean that school districts would not be able to opt out of that UI. Just so we have that on the record. Thank you for that amendment.
Thank you. Members, all those in favor of the A1 author's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Representative Bakeberg, present your bill, and our goal is to be done in 7 minutes.
All right, so I will just make it brief. This House File 957 allows for funding flexibility through the 28-29 school year unless it is otherwise encumbered under federal law. So really it gets down to allowing school districts the funding and the flexibility. We know that many of our districts are facing financial crises coming. So it allows districts that funding and some flexibility within the different buckets is what you'll hear schools talk about. And the other piece of it is the school district, and they have to follow a process, but they can implement the mandates passed over the last few years in a staggered form which best fit their local needs. So with that, Madam Chair, I will open it up to member discussion.
Thank you, Representative Bakeberg. Members, Representative Jordan.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you also and Representative Bakeberg and Madam Chair, thank you both for tabling the bills. It sounds like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on those bills. So when they come up, I'm sure there will be a robust member discussion around those. We know there's a lot going on, so thank you for tabling those bills. My question relates to, I guess my question, I'm glad we took care of one of my questions. We didn't take care of my other question, which is, how is this constitutional? Schools have an obligation to have a uniform, it's in our Minnesota Constitution, have a uniform standard of education. If schools are picking and choosing which laws to follow and which laws not to follow, how is that constitutional?
Representative Bakeberg.
Yep, there are a lot of differences in programming options in different implementation curriculum. There is a wide variety of local control that districts already have. This allows districts to implement the different mandates that were passed, the over 65 different mandates passed in the last legislative session that frankly are hamstringing districts. So the consistent piece that I've heard, and as I've looked into your question, Representative Jordan, is that we have unity, but we don't have uniformity over what happens in our schools. So there's some consistency that happens, but it is not exactly different in every single school district.
Representative Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know that I know that we're running for time here, so I will just say that I don't really think that satisfies, that doesn't really satisfy my concern about the Constitution. I know that that this is the Constitution. It is the highest law apart from the U.S. Constitution in Minnesota. And allowing school districts to pick and choose, can I ask one more question, actually?
Representative Jordan, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And So does this mean that if school districts are opting out of a policy, are they also opting out of funding associated with that policy that might be in place? Or is it purely a policy opt-out, or is it also opting out of funding?
Representative Bakeberg.
So funding in public schools is on a per pupil formula. So funding would go with schools. If there's a grant program, schools have an opportunity to choose or not choose to apply for grants. There are grants that are high school, that a high school will apply for, and then there are grant opportunities that a different school doesn't apply for. So if a school chooses to not pursue a grant, let's say the non-exclusionary discipline grants, that is their prerogative to do, but the funding is, we fund our schools on a per pupil formula. And if we want to have a conversation about how we fund and the different buckets, I would be happy to have that conversation.
There's a whole committee.
Those are some significant issues that need to be addressed.
And Representative Jordan, if I might answer that question a little bit too, it's part of House File 6. It is the intention of that bill that if a school chooses to delay a mandate, they would also delay that funding, and we can work on language that clarifies that component if we need to. And then just in regards to the uniformity of schools, we have independent school districts throughout the entire state that are operated by their own school boards. We have a ton of, is the word uninformed? Well, whatever the word would be, there's not a lot of conformity in many areas. And so if that's the case, then we haven't been following the Constitution since the beginning of our schools. But these will have further discussion. Again, this is going to Education Finance. It's already been heard through House File 6. Representative Jordan, any wrap-up question or comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I'll just make more of a kind of a broader comment that, you know, we say the word mandate, but what we really mean is education policy. We heard about one of these mandates from a lot of parents who fought for years to make sure that their kids would not be pushed out of classrooms because they identified those racial disparities and those disparities for children with disabilities. That wasn't the only bill that was passed that was brought and on the foundation of community feedback. And when we say community, we're literally talking about the kids in our schools. We're talking about their parents. We're talking about their teachers. We're talking about the person who helps them on the bus. That's where those bills came from. This isn't just, these are, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about mandates. We're talking about things like making sure kids have access to mental health support. We're talking about kids that have access to teachers that might have different aspects of, that might have been licensed under a different way. Like, these are not just, you know, mandates and things that we say just because. These are real laws that were brought by community. So I still would recommend a no vote on this bill.
Thank you, Representative Jordan. Representative Bakeberg, 30-second wrap-up.
Yep, we need to allow for flexibility for our school districts, or we will continue to struggle and we will continue to have budget reductions across their schools.
Thank you. So the chair renews the motion that House File 957, as amended, be re-referred to the Education Finance Committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, and the motion prevails and the bill is on its way to Education Finance.